All right.
Okay,
Are we healed enough to talk about grief yet?
let's do it.
At what point are you healed enough
Yeah,
for
right.
grief? Welcome to Let's Pick This Up Next Week. I'm Dee.
And I'm DJ. We're two therapists who like to dive deep into everything from mental health to politics, voting, and whatever else is going on in the world.
We're here to have real conversations about life, the issues that matter, and how it all affects us. Because let's face it, there's always something more to talk about.
Exactly. So grab your coffee, settle in, and join us as we break it all down.
We'll catch you up on the big stuff, the personal stuff, and the things you didn't even know that you needed to think about.
And when we run out of time,
we'll pick this up next week. I don't know if I still remember how to do this.
Podcast.
It's been so long since we podcasted.
Yes. Yeah. It's definitely been more than a week.
It's been more than a few weeks. We would be that bad therapists for listener abandonment at this point.
We're like, let's pick this. We should call it Let's Pick This Up Whenever.
Let's pick this up whenever. And now is whenever. So welcome back. DJ, how are you doing?
I'm all right, Dee. It's good to be back.
It's very good to be back. It's been a busy summer, for sure. So we're glad to be back.
Yeah. Lots of changes this summer.
Lots of changes. And we did some good presentations this summer.
That's right, yeah.
Both went through some life stuff. And that leads us to today's topic of talking about everyone's favorite topic of grief. Good grief, right? Are we Charlie Brown? Are you too old to get that reference, a Charlie Brown reference?
Peanuts are way before my time.
I know. There's all kinds of grief. We all are impacted by grief at different times. So today, I hope you're interested in talking about some grief myths and some discussion on what grief looks like and what it is and how to deal with it. We all deal with it all the time.
Yeah, that's true.
So Dr. G, what are like some invisible griefs? Because we all know like grief can include like loss, death of a loved one, death of, like that's kind of the most visible grief. And it's one that's most societally acceptable. Like if you say this person that I love or this pet or this whatever, passed away, people will immediately usually respond with sympathy and, whatever. But sometimes the loss isn't that easy to like describe or allow others to understand it. So what do you think are some of the invisible griefs that we forget about?
I wonder, like, the first thing that came to my mind was like injury. Like if someone breaks an ankle, for example. I don't think people think about the grief that might come with like the loss of independence, especially if you're on crutches. And I know that because like that happened to me when I broke my ankle. So I think there are things that people just don't assume. They might be like, oh, ouch, that's rough, but like don't understand the grief that might come with something like that.
Yeah.
Or illness, and like job loss. I think sometimes we think about job loss, but maybe not, because people think, well, just go get another job.
Yeah.
Supervisors, if you're at a job and a supervisor leaves or gets fired, stuff like that.
That's one that, so to hit on a couple of those too, is like, I always find the one about like illness or injury really interesting because, and not to get off on a completely different topic, but there's a lot of studies because people are like, oh, if I woke up tomorrow and I was blind, or I woke up tomorrow and I was paralyzed and lost the ability to walk, people think like, oh, my life would be absolutely awful. But what research actually supports is that, of course, there's a low in happiness and quality of life. But then people who become disabled later in life, their level of happiness actually goes back to pretty much where it was before once they adjust to it. But it's that adjustment period that freaks us all out.
Right.
And that's the grief process right there in the middle. You mentioned even like change of supervisors, and it may not strike everyone as, I don't know, as closely as like in the clinical world and many other worlds too. I just know, my partner, he's a welder and he's like, I could care less who my supervisor is. But in the clinical world, we meet individually with our staff on a very regular basis. We know about their life. We know about, the important things happening. We know about their kids' birthdays and their partners, whatever. Like, we know a lot about them. And so it's a little bit of grief to lose a supervisor, and also even a friend at work can be a sense of invisible loss.
Yeah. Very true.
Yeah. I know you mentioned too, loss of status as well is a common sense of loss that we forget about, of Loss of status, meaning, you know, if someone, to the extent you said, like lost their job, but also they're now empty nesters. And what does that mean? It's the loss of that. When we age, we lose sense of independence, and we lose people that we love over time. We have a lot of grief in this life. It isn't, not to be all like glass half full, in my ever optimistic self, but isn't grief the price we pay for love? Isn't that the most beautiful thing?
Isn't there a quote that says something like that, or you're just making it up today?
I wish. Credit me for that. Credit Dee for that. But no, I believe that is someone else's quote. I think it might have been Queen Elizabeth that said grief is the price we pay for love.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't fact check it.
Maybe it'll be like one of those things
me.
one of those quotes that Abraham Lincoln says about the internet, like that.
Yes, Abraham Lincoln did say a lot about the internet. Depends on who you ask. Don't check the sources.
Yeah. But I mean, yes, I mean, that's what, you know, I often talk about when I'm, you know, I do a lot of treatment for people with OCD. And, you know, the OCD rate stems from uncertainty and like a real huge big fear of uncertainty, huge big. And that's what I talk about is like risk, right? Like that's the fact of it, is like so much of our life is uncertainty. And like just being a human being comes with so much risk. And and that could be a risk that you try not to take, right? Is that I don't want to have to experience grief, so then I'll keep people far away from me. So you can't have closeness and love if you know, have that huge a fear of grief.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And I think, like, I mean, not to get too vulnerable, because I certainly don't have feelings, but you know, I went through quite a few. Right? No, I'm above feelings of grief and loss. Just kidding.
Right.
But, you know, if you're a video watcher, you probably see in my background, it is not my usual background because I moved. I sold my house and I moved to a different city. And even though it's what I ultimately wanted, it's grief, you know, it's still sad. Like I struggled a lot. DJ, I don't know how many snaps. I don't know if I bombarded you with them or just everybody else, but like the amount of times I had to go back to my house when it was empty, because it was like, oh, I went back to go and get the last piece of furniture out, or I went back to make sure that the key was in the box so that the new family can have it. And I went to go drop off a letter that I wrote to the new family just about, here's the little quirks about the house. Like, I was sad every time walking through my house and just thinking of like, wow, I really made this a home. You know?
Yeah.
I lived there for 11 years.
It's a long time.
And so it was really sad to leave that, and a lot of other life stuff going on at the same time. But I think I was able to hyper focus on the house as my biggest sense of grief. So that allowed some healing. But yeah, so moving, even though it's ultimately what I wanted, caused a lot of grief. And I'm still going through it.
Yeah, we were talking about self-chosen grief. Can be the hardest kind because, you know, when you're talking about like maybe invisible grief, like that could be something because people feel like it's a choice that you made. So, you know, then you must not feel sad about it. And that just because you make a choice and it might be like the best thing for where you're at in your life, you can still feel a sense of loss or sadness.
Yeah, and it's one that not many people necessarily register, because we tie things like selling your house and moving, we tie them to positive things.
Right.
So when I've told people like I moved, people will say, well, congratulations. And I'm like, I mean, yes, in a way, of course, like ultimately, like this is what I wanted, but then it's hard to say like, it's not really congratulations and it's not really a pity party. It just is.
Right.
But it's hard because then people are ready to meet you with excitement. And I'm like, let's downplay that excitement. Same way of like empty nesters, people will say, well, congrats, now all your kids are out of the house. And it's like, well, no, it's not actually everyone's response to that.
Exactly. And I think like too, you with like I'm mentioning empty nesters, that you know, there's so many identities that we have that are tied to like the roles in our life. So, you know, it can be especially hard for someone to navigate through grief, like that their role was like a wife and then like a husband dies. But then they have a new role, and that role is widow. And it can be hard then, even because now you have this new identity. And what does that mean for how you move through grief? So it can like be so complicated when like if so much of your being becomes tied to like one or other of those roles.
100%. Or even like, I don't know, even going through like medical stuff. Like, I think of a friend who, there's a lot of medical complexities in her life. And I just imagine every stage is just more grief, but then it becomes more complicated and it becomes the complex grief, which is as easy as it sounds, a clinical term though, complicated or complex grief. And it just gets harder and harder. And then at some point with any form of grief, you kind of don't want to talk about it anymore because it's like people may not understand how it's still so real.
Right. And I think, and people, when it comes to like talking about people, people get, have so many different ways to even be able to like engage or talk about it. Some people choose to like not talk about it. Some people may choose to talk to like one trusted person about it. Some people may talk to everybody about it. And some people might go to like support groups. There's so many different ways of how people choose to engage with others when it comes around that.
And it's all valid. I think sometimes grief makes other people uncomfortable. Loss makes people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So like when people say to me like, oh, I just had this recent loss. What's the common go-to phrase that we all have of, I'm so sorry for your loss.
Sorry for your loss.
It's meaningful, but it's also kind of like, because we're just so uncomfortable. We need to have like a sense of script, essentially.
Right.
Grief makes us uncomfortable.
There's no good words. I mean, I learned pretty early on, as a kid whose dad died, so I got to like learn really early on, like what it's like to like experience a loss like that, but also how people reacted, and like I just learned like there's really nothing you can say, like nothing anybody said made it better, but there were things that people could say that made it worse. But
100%.
Right? Yeah. But, and I think just like, and I'm sorry, it expresses at least that you understand that another person is hurting and you wouldn't wish that on.
Even like from like a therapeutic standpoint. So I often work with people who are not counselors. I work a lot in the justice system. And if somebody has an immediate loss, like I distinctly remember when my office used to be inside the correctional facility, if a client received a phone call and said, someone in their life passed away, immediately they'd be like, call the counselor. This person needs to see a counselor. And I'm like, well, yes, of course they can come and sit in my office. But like people will be like, well, what do you say? What do you do? And I'm like, you don't really say anything. You listen, you hold space, you sit, you just say, hey, it's okay. I'm just gonna be right here. So
holding space is like the best way to really support someone through grief. And somebody just asked me today what it meant to hold space.
I was just about to say, can you give, what are your thoughts on defining give space?
I have, and not if everybody's seen this show, but I think like giving the example from the show can like paint a picture, like where I saw the greatest example of a difference of not holding space and what holding space is. So I can't watch the show anymore, but I did watch Love is Blind season 3. And it was the first season of Love is Blind that I watched. So there was a couple, they didn't make it, this couple. And actually it was like a second iteration of a couple anyways. So like one woman like was featuring which dog was it?
That's Sloopy just barking Sloopy, over here. That's the joy of my new apartment is that I don't have an office that's its own room. I just get to be out here with my barky dogs.
No door. That's all right. We like our dog co-stars.
Yes.
I called you my co-star to one of my sisters, and my sister was like, "Ooh, co-star!"
So
like I didn't know you had it like that.
We're stars.
Anyway, so
Love is Blind season 2.
Love is Blind season 3. So there was a couple.
Season 3. I'm sorry.
So it was like the girl originally. It was a woman, and she had like split up with a guy, and now she was with her second guy, and she was like experiencing some grief over like her family dynamics, I would say. And she was in like a bathroom and not managing her grief well. Like she was, kind of very dysregulated and screaming and yelling and such. Her guy was like outside the bathroom, like, just let me in there. Let me fix this for you. Like, you have to talk to me. Like, come on. Like, you can't, you don't have to be like this. Like, let me in. And like, it was just so hard to see. And then later on, and I don't know if it was the same episode, but an episode later, there was another couple, and there was a woman who was like going through a hard time. I was planning her wedding, but going through a hard time. And, you know, she was like really struggling and like, this is hard. And I think she wanted her mom there and her mom wasn't there and like all this kind of stuff. And like, this is hard to navigate on my own. And like came home and was talking to her guy. And she sat on the couch. He sat next to her. He put his arm around her. He like, yeah, that sounds like that was really hard. And like, you know, I know that if you could do this differently, you would. And like, you know, just like comfort and like that's holding space. It's like just being there and like noting and validating without feeling like you have to fix it, because we can't fix it for anybody. And wanting to fix it actually comes from a lot of times a place of other people's trauma, right? Like codependency and that kind of stuff. But like just being able to be in that space, not make it about you and that person to know that like I'm here.
Exactly. I mean, they're uncomfortable by other people's grief a lot of times, and that's okay. Right. And as therapists, we can kind of say like, you know, it's easy for us to say like, it's easy, just deal with other people's grief because we sit with it so much.
We do.
We're used to it. We're like, you know, my cousin was a grief counselor for a very long time and worked with people in their dying stages and worked with the families. And for her, talking about death is, you know, totally normal. Like there's no taboo-ness to it because just take the tab. But I can say over Thanksgiving dinner, 90% of the rest of my family is like, please stop talking about that.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Because it just makes people uncomfortable. And
it does.
I say that not to say she's making people uncomfortable, but not that at all. Do not take it that way. But and that many people are not comfortable with that, and hopefully they get more comfortable because that's where healing comes from.
Yeah. I mean, it is one of those things that, right? Like, you know, I mean, you know, I talk about vulnerability so much. It's my favorite, like vulnerability and authenticity. And like, you know, like as a society, right, we're taught like, don't air like that kind of stuff. Like, don't burden people with like your hard times or your grief. So like we get conditioned to like, we shouldn't talk about it. You know, and because of that, it feels like if you hear it, that like, you know, something wrong is happening. And like, if I just like ignore it, maybe it'll stop. Yeah. Unless you're at a funeral, that's the appropriate place. Or visit, you know, like we have appropriate places to be able to manage our grief. And please don't take it outside of those venues.
There's a lot that we get wrong about grief, though. Like, I'm sure every listener has heard of what's actually the Kubler-Ross stages of grief, right? DABDA, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. We've heard of them. They're often misunderstood, right? And for a couple reasons. One is that grief is not linear.
Right.
It does not follow necessarily those 5 stages, but also, I mean, sometimes it does. If it does, great. If it doesn't, great too, right? But also that study that found those 5 stages was actually a study done on terminally ill patients about their own concept about grief, about their own death. So that's really where it came from. And that's not to say other people don't experience similar things, because I've said this to people before and they're like, but I do experience anger and I do experience bargaining. And I'm like, absolutely. Right. But the actual 5 stages of grief is a myth, because it's not really 5 stages of grief.
We do, and we don't, and you're right, the model was for people who are terminally ill, so we don't really apply it in the right place. You know, she's gone. What's her name? Kubler, whatever. Like, she's passed away, right? There's a guy that I should have looked and gave his name right now, but he did some research with her, like in the last years of her life. Like she was working very closely with this dude, but he now goes and speaks about grief a lot. And I often, it's come up in a couple of my sessions that I find it problematic because I don't know why he got chosen to be a part of her grief research, because like, you don't know what his background is. Like somehow he ended up like studying grief with her and being on books, and now he like takes the research and he's still talking about it. So like her research is out there and alive from this guy who I don't know what his credentials are. And I always like to know, like, if you're a grief expert, like I can give you, okay, you worked with her and we know that she, you know, did some research, but like, why should we listen to you? But anyway, that research, that research is
dissing
still
his whole life without even
it.
knowing his name.
That research, and I understand that like there's some drawbacks to the way that I want to know what like is your experience lived experience, and I'm looking at it from that lens. Is your experience, you're a researcher and I'm looking at it from that lens? Is your experience, you know a guy who knows a guy, am I looking at it from that lens? Like I want to know.
I mean, not to be too meta, but don't we all have lived experience with grief?
I mean, maybe.
I think we do. I think grief is universal.
Sure, it could be, but what if you're somebody who like compartmentalizes and has never really worked through grief? You have an experience, and your experience is like, I compartmentalize. What's grief? I don't know.
Working through and having a shared experience are not mutually exclusive.
You're right. Yeah.
Like you can have grief and compartmentalize, and that is your experience with grief, and that is a valid, although maybe not the most healthy way to deal with grief.
Right. There's a difference between a container and compartmentalizing. I used to be the expert at compartmentalizing. I had a therapist who once said to me, "You're really good at compartmentalizing." And I was like, "Thank you."
But you have such a good, I know you said it on a podcast quite some time ago, but a great analogy about why compartmentalizing actually makes a mess. I think it's the shoe boxes example.
Yeah, it's like putting stuff in boxes and stacking them up, and you can only stack them up like so high, and they just come tumbling.
Yep.
I like containers, though. We can put, containers. I mean, we can be like, whoa, this is too much for me right now. Like today, I have to go to work. I need to try and get through my work day. Just have to get to like 5 o'clock. And then like I can try and like work through some stuff and process some stuff then. So you're like putting it in a container, versus like putting it in a box and like, putting duct tape and electrical tape and, all the things all around it. So like,
Gorilla glue. And,
right. And like I am never touching this again. That's different.
Well, okay. And here's the thing is I've had friends give me a hard time about this, but I kind of preemptively schedule cries, and not all the time. Right. But it's to me, cause it's a container, like, it's the container's there and ready for you. Even when you do EMDR, one of the first things in EMDR is you make a container, a safe place to put things when you need to put them away. And it's like the whole idea, and I don't know if your EMDR training was the same because there's different flavors of EMDR, but in mine, it was very much to make it a comfortable box, make it a very comfortable container for those emotions to sit in when they need to sit in there, and then bring them out when you need to bring them out. And so I've always used that idea of like, okay, if I am, like you said, I'm on my way to work, I don't have time to be sad about this, or I've got 20 million things to do. I'm not going to compartmentalize. And like right on cue, my eyes are watering. I promise I'm not crying. I'm just over here sobbing. But I'm not compartmentalizing, and I'm not over intellectualizing. Well, sometimes I do, my grief or my sadness, but it's like, I can't hold space for this right now.
Right.
This deserves its own time. This deserves.
Right.
So like, I will, for example, again with my house, I knew the last time I was there, I just like scheduled a little bit of time to just sit in my favorite rooms and to, and to cry and be okay with that. Cause that's,
it is
what I needed instead of crying every day on my, while I'm packing up a U-Haul. Like, it's not worth it. That's not what it's about. I needed to have some space for grief.
Yeah.
And also invisible grief. My hydrangeas in my front yard have never looked better than the day I sold that house. And I'm like, I've tried for years to make these hydrangeas look this beautiful. It was my going away present from the house.
Yeah. And that like, when you're talking about all the loss and Sokjo's and loss, and like, it's really easy to be able to see it in an object. Like, so much of our grief is like inside where you can't like really see it or touch it, or it's like, but like a house, you're able to like, you actually can see it. You actually like can see it where once it was like full and now it's like, empty and all the stuff. So like, it's an actual visual representation of like, what you're feeling.
Yep. So there's a lot of really unhelpful things that we tell people about grief, especially like telling them like you have to move through these stages when like, I don't think, thinking about, again, the 5 stages: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. If you're a fan of The Office, which DJ, I know you're not.
No, right. Yeah.
Sadly, in the words of Michael Scott, if I can't get them to accept it, at least I can get them depressed. Because he was hoping to move his staff through the stages of grief after a former employee that they hadn't worked with in a long time died. He wanted to get them through the stages of grief. And so he like had a funeral for a bird. It was a whole thing. A very good episode. But nonetheless, he does say that he'd like to get his employees depressed so they can work through these stages. But I think when we talk about acceptance sounds like done, I got it, check, Julio, right? But grief, you're never going to be at a place of perfect peace acceptance.
No.
I don't think it exists. I think that's a myth. What do you think?
Well, that's the thing is like, that's why I like the DBT concept of radical acceptance, because I feel like that's not a myth, because I feel like it's more of a realistic way to like come to acceptance, which is like, you don't have to like it. Like, there's nothing in this that means that like, oh, I'm happy about this loss that happened. It's great. Wonderful. Like, accepting it doesn't mean that, that you find something you like about it. Acceptance, radical acceptance just is that this is the circumstances. I don't have to like it, but I can't deny that this is what's happened.
Yep. It just, it is.
It is.
Yeah. You don't have to have a judgment on that to say,
right. Yeah.
It's great. Or, whatever. Do you know what I hate? Oh, I hate so bad when people say all things happen for a reason.
Oh, yeah.
It kills me. Because like, okay, not to get all like spiritual, in a way, as a universe as a whole, sure, we can make meaning out of anything and butterfly effect and all this great stuff. But if I just lost something and I am deep within my grief and some MFer tells me, all things happen for a reason, I'm like, is there a reason for this? Like, what? This is not helpful. It is not a helpful thing to say to people.
It's not, because it really also that does like discount the hurt that somebody might feeling, and almost like, you don't feel this way, like, because everything happens for a reason. I don't like that. Like, it is what it is in a way of like radical acceptance, but like, it is what it is in a way of like, when people are like, well, it is what it is. I mean, again, like, that's discounting like somebody's like experience. Like, no, it's not just is what it is. Like, you're hurting and now you just is what it is to hurt away. And like, told yourself that you can't feel that. And that's not good either.
Yeah. Similarly, the time heals all wounds.
Right.
It doesn't. Time alone, the passage of time means nothing when it comes to grief or loss.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah. And that book, Your Body Keeps a Score. And we talk about, right, like
the body keeps the score.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Just
why I think
yours. Yours is the only body.
Do you know
that
why
keeps
I think
the
that I
score?
wanted to? Do you know what I would think? Why I think that I wanted to change the title is because I notice a lot of times when I work with people who have some like disassociation or have a hard time like connecting their mind and body, they'll talk about like, and not my arm, my leg, like the arm, the leg. So I think that's why like I really focus on like that like language and like, let's make a connection and ownership. So I think that's
some
probably
parts work right there.
why I did it. Yeah. So it's fascinating to me when I hear people say that. But anyway, it's not just like, right, our body holds on to trauma and we can have like somatic symptoms, right, from trauma, but also our body remembers anniversaries. So like, if you're like on a day and you're like, man, why do I feel so crappy today? And you may like then just remember that like it's an anniversary of, some loss. And you're like, oh, okay, this makes some sense. But there is some research that says like our body really holds on to, like, it remembers the dates and stuff. So like, it's not like it's an anniversary and you're like thinking the anniversary again. Like, think of it or not, your body knows it.
Yep. Oh no, for sure. I mean, like, I think that there's something deep within us that holds grief. So saying time heals it all. Well, time alone doesn't. I think gallbladder, actually.
I don't have a gallbladder anymore. No more grief for me.
No more grief. Look at
ever since 2018. I don't know what's happened. I feel like I've had some grief since then. I didn't know. I just didn't know.
It was in the gallbladder. Yeah, it does that and bile. Those are the two things that the gallbladder takes care of.
A gallbladder is supposed to. Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like a lot of functions of our body are supposed to deal with bile, right?
But that was the problem with my gallbladder, is it didn't deal with bile. So anyway,
it
didn't work. And now my body's like, feels so much better now because there's not the gallbladder in the way of all the bile moving. Yeah. Anyway.
But so to get back to the general idea of like time heals all wounds, like it doesn't. It takes work. It takes like, I always tell people, when like a lot of clients have told me it feels like opening up old wounds. And I'm like, yes, but that wound was infected. It was an ugly scar. It was, so yeah, sometimes we got to open it back up to pack it all up nicely and heal it. That ugly scar will still be there, but it'll feel a little bit better.
Yeah. And also, like, a lot of times people have a hard time getting to the acceptance part of grief, because of the fact of like they feel like they can't let go. If I let go, like especially like in a divorce or relationship breakup or something like that, like if I let go, then that means that I no longer want this person. And what if I still want this person and I want them to come back, but I've let go, and so now, like, I've ruined the whole thing, because now like they'll never come back because you're still in denial and all that kind of stuff. And I try to like work with people again to be like that the control that you're imagining of like not letting go, right, is not real, because whether you let go or not, it doesn't prevent like, right, yes, it's real. And also it doesn't mean that like if it's meant to be someday in the future, that's not going to be stopped because like you didn't let go or you did let go, right?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like to talk about grief as like as far as like letting go and that kind of stuff. Like, have you heard of like the grief box or the ball in the box analogy?
Yeah, I remember from Doctor.
Probably was a Dr. K thing.
I think
pulled it up
Dr.
because I have a handout in my office that I use when I talk about it because I poorly explain it, but it talks about how feelings of grief change over time, right? So imagine like we're gonna do a if people are visual people, how some people don't actually picture in their mind what they're thinking about.
There's a word for that.
So weird. Yeah, but anywho, so think about a box and think about a ball in a box and think about a button on the side of the box, right? In the early stages of grief, that ball is very big. It takes up the majority of the box. You literally cannot move the box without that ball hitting that button, and that button's the pain button, right? This ball is going to rattle around and hits that button over and over and over again. You feel like you can't control it, you can't stop it. It's literally hitting that pain button all of the time. But as time goes on and working through it, right? Not just the passage of time, but working through it, the ball gets smaller. It will never disappear completely. It'll never just not decide to ever hit that pain button again, but it's generally easier each day, right? And then eventually the ball is so much smaller that it will randomly hit that pain button. And that's when we have that like wave of grief of like, oh my gosh, it could be months or years after something happened, but we feel that pang of grief because it hit the pain button inside the box. But usually it doesn't. That grief will always be there. That pain will always be there. It just doesn't get struck all of the time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good analogy.
So just because you have a pang or a wave of grief, even after you feel like you've accepted, in quotes, a loss, doesn't mean that you're not still at a good place in acceptance.
Right. And nope, I forget what I was going to say because I had two thoughts at the same. I had two thoughts.
And then they both went away.
Oh, and because you're grieving something, especially like when we talked about like self-chosen grief, because you're grieving something doesn't mean that like for your life at that time it was not a right decision. Yeah. And I did write like quotes because a lot of times people get stuck, right? Like, am I making the wrong decision or the right decision? And like you're writing your life as you're going right now. It's not like it's a pre-written thing. So like whether it's right or wrong depends on like, the choices are and how you feel.
Which is terrifying. It's terrifying to realize we have autonomy as humans and we can make mistakes and we can, it's terrifying.
Yeah, I hear you. But I think as someone who's a recovering perfectionist, that there's so much peace and being able to know that like you get to make choices and like along the way, you know that like you don't have to do it perfect. You don't have to do it always right. That like you're just going to do the best you can for where you're at and know that like, things will unfold how they unfold. And my favorite statement to say to remind people and like you don't have to know all the outcomes. You don't have to know if you're going to make the right or wrong choices. All you have to know is that like you are equipped to handle whatever it is that comes your way. And I love to give examples of like when people fear or grieve or think about what if I lose this or what if I lose that, and sometimes they don't even, bless you, something they don't even think about happens, and they manage through that.
I muted myself for that sneeze.
Oh yeah,
so
and
you just
bless you. I said bless you
Shout it
just
out.
for no reason. Oh, I just thought you quiet sneezed, Dee.
I have the loudest sneeze of all time, so no.
I bet I could out sneeze you.
Come be my neighbor and we'll just sneeze through the shared wall.
I am gonna come be your neighbor.
I know, I'm so excited for you to move
wait.
back.
Yeah,
Me
yeah.
too.
I can't wait. It's gonna be several months, but as soon as I get my braces off. So that, and also like I think it can be scary at first, but I think there can be some peace. And like, you know, one of my favorite quotes that I've seen via like Facebook or something is like, when you're in a hard time, remember that 100% of the time you've made it through all your other hard times. That can be empowering.
Absolutely.
Yep. The other thing I was thinking is that a lot of times I see that people who have had a loss and they think that like, I'm trying to think about like how much I want to disclose. So say like someone, like one of the losses we didn't talk about, and a lot of times the shame comes around is miscarriage and stillbirths. So like when people lose a child before like the, a child had a birthday. And I think one of the times that I've seen is people who've experienced this loss is like trying to convince themselves that like, maybe being a mom would have been too stressful anyway. And maybe I wasn't really ready for it. And like they think that they have to like justify, the loss without just being able to feel like this is a loss and this is real and it hurts. And like I can move through it and I'm going to be okay. And I don't have to minimize it or rationalize it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think people often mistake justifying for meaning making, but meaning making in like the therapeutic sense doesn't actually mean like make this make meaning, right? Like like find a reason this happened or whatever. But meaning making is a lot about like boosting resilience by finding ways to like give like honor whatever that grief or loss is. Like that's the true meaning making. It isn't about explaining it away, but how do you provide space for it? Whether that's a activity, a ritual, something that you do to feel more whole within you.
Right. And that's like the recommendations that I make. It's like you can do this instead of doing that.
Absolutely.
Another thought, a loss that like I thought of when you were looking up that one was, I think, well, this could be related to, so I'm going in too many layers in my head, that could be related to like illness or injury. But also when I was thinking back to when I was a high school track star. I always compare myself to Al Bundy with like my glory days of high school sports. But like my junior prom, that day before the prom, I had regionals for track, and I had won districts in the 800-meter run. And the way that I ran the 800-meter was to like stay almost in last for the first lap. It's 2 laps. Stay almost in last for the first lap, and then second lap pass everybody and win. But going into regionals, my coach was like, "Hey, this is regionals, and you're not going to be able to run that way. Like you got to go full hard for both laps." So, and for that race, that's the first time I ever did it. And so I go full hard for both laps. I get to the last 100 yards. I have no steam left. Like I literally got passed. I was in first and got passed by like enough people that I didn't even place. Like I was just, my body felt like it was in cement. So that night, like junior prom's supposed to happen, I'm like not going. I'm not going to do it because like that level of grief, like the fact that like grieving like what I thought I was going to be able to do and what I thought I was capable of doing and not accomplishing a goal that I had set for myself. And back in my early days, I could not handle like that kind of loss of or grief over like of not showing up the way that I thought I should show up.
That's perfect. That's a really good example of how like we regularly feel feelings of grief. So DJ, what's your favorite, as we kind of start to wrap, what is your favorite homework assignment? Do you call it a homework assignment? What do you call it?
When I'm working with people, I do sometimes call it homework. Yeah.
I call it homework. Sometimes I call between session work.
Yeah.
I don't know. In the substance use world, we say a lot of practice work because they're practicing the work. But what's your go-to homework or between session work for people who are experiencing grief?
It's a good question because I don't know. Like a lot of times, I may have people like journal. It depends on if they're if journaling is their thing. I don't always give grief homework, to be honest. I feel like I'm put on the spot. Yeah.
Okay. That's fair.
Yeah. But I think like sometimes journaling, what do you use?
Journaling is a big one. As I don't know, I think that journaling is classic for a reason. And I tell people journaling could be a lot of things. Journaling can be doodling or making art, and you can use it kind of collectively over time to see process.
Right.
Like journaling doesn't mean, dear diary, today I was
Right.
sad because it's been
Right.
372 days since ... right?
Right.
It can be, because that's really healing. Like I know I came across some like old journals that I had written in recently, and I was like, oh, this was really like, it allows me to put that perspective back on over
Right.
periods of time. So I think journaling is helpful. I think
Letters.
finding
I have had
letters are
people write
great.
letters that they won't maybe give somebody. I have had people do that.
Yep. Letters you'll never send. I always tell people to burn them when they're done. Like if they
Oh
want to do
yeah.
that as part of their cleansing exercise, is to
Yeah.
write the letter you'll never send. One of my favorite exercises with grief work, because it's not between session, but it's during session, is called the empty chair. So
Gestalt
empty
therapy.
chair is Gestalt. I love Gestalt. Empty chair is about, quite literally, as a person talking to an empty chair. And there's a lot of variations to it, but a lot of time you kind of mentally put the person that you have things left unsaid to that person, whether it's the person you're grieving. I've had people do it with like even if that person's still alive, but things that they've just never had a chance to say or whatever,
Right.
to
Excuse me.
address it to the empty chair. Like one of my favorite exercises to do it. And we have a session in one of our evidence-based curriculums where the clients address their mom in the chair. I think there's a version with their dad too, but a lot of like, whoa, microphone's falling over.
Nice. Testing.
But they testing. But they address their mom and say the things that they'd want to say. And some people say, thank you so much, mom. You taught me so much in life. I'm so grateful for you. And, I love you. And, and other people say, I miss you and I wish you were there. Or other people say, I hate you and I hate what you did. And I am worse off because of it. Right. But it's a really great way to address that person, because recognizing grief and acceptance lives in with yourself, right? Acceptance doesn't mean amends. Acceptance doesn't mean have a beautiful, perfect relationship after, but it's a totally internal process to have that true sense of acceptance.
I know it. My clients love when I say
the quotes.
Closure is an inside job, because that's the truth, right? You can like seek out, you might want to like have a conversation with somebody else, but like still the closure has to come from you. And a lot of times you're not going to be able to get the closure from the other person, if it's death, like for sure. And like even in breakups, you're likely not going to hear the things that you think you need to hear in order to like get the closure. It has to come from you.
Absolutely. Closure's an inside job. Well, I hope that if you're someone who is struggling with grief or has experienced grief like most of us have, this has been helpful for you. As just a reminder, because grief is a very touchy thing. There are emergency and crisis resources always available. National crisis, it's not called crisis now, whatever it is. The Lifeline is 988. You can call, text, or online chat anytime, 24/7. A crisis does not have to mean that you want to hurt yourself or someone else. That's a common misnomer. If you are in acute crisis and you need someone to talk to, they'll talk to people. I love for my clients that are early in recovery, there's someone who will talk to you if you're struggling with using. You just text 988.
Yeah.
It's great for grief too, whenever you're needing that, like, if you don't have like a mental health urgent care or something else, when you're in that acute crisis, you don't need to be seen, but you need to be heard.
Yeah,
it's a really good way to access that resource.
I was wondering, I was like, Dee, should we do a disclaimer? Good on you.
We should do a disclaimer about 988. So
yeah, awesome.
988. And they can also connect you with resources in your local area as well. As most 988, fun little fact, at least in the state of Ohio, you're actually first connected with a local resource. If your local resource isn't available, then it's your regional resource. If your regional is available, then state. And if state's not available, then national. On average, people wait less than a minute to talk to someone, a real live person. So it's a great resource.
Yeah. Awesome.
All right. Well, grief is not linear, but this episode was. Maybe our next episode will be linear and we'll talk again soon. I don't know. But we appreciate everyone's patience and the new viewers and listeners. And we just hope that you keep tuning in and find this helpful and validating. And as always, please subscribe, like, comment, share, leave a review. all of those things that help people find us so we can keep doing what we're doing and making content that is helpful to you, the viewers.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And I hope you all have a great day, week, life, year, whatever. See you soon.